pretty good recognition for leading the nation in volunteerism and in charitable contributions. People know that Utah is a place that cares about their neighbors. I think that Utah has always had a very special place in our hearts for refugees, specifically, probably in large part because of how Utah came to be. For those of you who don't know, 182 years ago, the state of Missouri actually passed a law ordering the extermination of all members of the LDS faith. They were driven from their homes, their property was seized, their lands were burned, they were murdered and chased out. They basically walked to Utah to find a place where they could be safe from prosecution, from persecution, from violence, from harm. And here in this patch of land that nobody else wanted, those LDS pioneers made the desert bloom like a rose. And I believe, this is my personal belief, that is probably why Utah has such a soft spot in our hearts for those who are looking for a place where they can be free, where they can be safe, and where they can be supported. I think there's a reason that the LDS Church provides so many resources and volunteers. And I think even those who are not of that LDS faith, I don't think you can be a part of Utah and not feel that sense of volunteerism and compassion that were carried here across the plains by those founding pioneers. Most people are most familiar with the hate crimes bill that we were able to get passed 2 years ago. That's probably the legislation that I've gotten the most attention for. But while that got all the attention, understand that there's still an awful lot to do. The police reforms that we're working on with use of force rules and oversight commissions, with the way that law enforcement is trained, the critical need to do a better job of recognizing and treating mental and behavioral health as a medical condition and not as a criminal action. There's a couple more bills that are probably not getting a lot of attention, but probably should. We've got a bill this year that makes it so that the state is not allowed to arbitrarily require a college degree for employment, which is something that I believe will really help remove barriers, especially from first generation refugees and budding Americans. Senator Maine has an amazing bill that opens the door to police service for those who are in the country legally, but who are not citizens or are not yet citizens. And I believe that bill could be one of the keys to having our state have a higher percentage and a better representation in our law enforcement that matches the representation of the membership of our state. Those are a few of the things we're working on this year that I'm excited about. I don't want to take a ton of your time, really. I want to be here to support you and answer your questions. But the 3 pieces of advice that I will leave with you, number 1, get to know your legislators. Everybody has a senator and a representative based on where you live. Find out who they are and make sure they know who you are. Reach out, introduce yourselves, tell them this is who I am, this is what I care about. Let us know that you're watching our votes. Let us know that you care. And I got to tell you, folks that I have built a relationship with, when I get an email from somebody that is a random person that says vote yes, vote no, I don't know if you understand the issue. I don't know if you're just doing something that's popular. But if I get an email from a constituent of mine that I know for a fact is a teacher, whose classroom I have visited at her request, whose kids I helped with their math homework, I guarantee when I get that email from Mrs. Stock in her 3rd grade class, I'm going to listen to her. So make sure your legislators know who you are. Secondly, learn how to use the legislative website. You can track all our bills. You can see all of our votes. You can listen to all of our committee debates, and you can participate. you can say, I know something about this bill and I'd like to be heard. And you can offer public comment. And the last thing I'll leave you with is this. Partisanship is not really part of what we do in the legislature. I know people don't know that because what they see is the media and the news and everybody always arguing and fighting. That's not the case up on the Hill. And if you come up and you watch what we do and you see our work, you'll see that. 95% of the time, the bills we pass are unanimous. And only rarely are there bills that are on straight party lines. I will tell you, Karen Main is one of my absolute favorite people on the planet, and she's considered a liberal Democrat. I'm considered a conservative Republican, but Karen and I vote together 98.7% of the time. We almost never disagree when it comes to policy, and I believe it's because we both represent West Valley City and the West Side and the blue collar workers that live here. So with that, thank you for being here. I'm glad you're here, and please let me know what I can do and how I can help.
Perfect. Thank you so much for those remarks, Senator Thatcher. And with that, we will dive into our presentation. We'll start with a little bit of Refugee 101. So first discussing who are refugees in terms of the legal definition of refugee status. And you'll see that a refugee is an individual who is outside of the US, who is of special humanitarian concern. And for example, there are some discussions about designating individuals from Hong Kong as individuals of special humanitarian concern eligible for refugee status. A refugee is someone who has demonstrated persecution due to race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or social group membership. They are not firmly resettled elsewhere, so typically this means an individual has been living in a refugee camp, and they are admissible to the US. And this refers to a series of statutes within the Immigration and Naturalization Act and has to do with everything from security procedures to health screenings. The resettlement in the United States has largely occurred since the 1940s with the advent of World War II and occurred on a crisis by crisis basis until about the 80s, when we have the Refugee Act of 1980, which codifies the program and also standardizes procedures for the reception and placement of refugees in the United States. The other key thing to know about the US Refugee Admissions Program is that the US determines how many refugees they will admit to the country every year at the beginning of the federal fiscal year, which is typically occurs in October. And you can see on your right that there have been high numbers of annual admissions across different administrations, from Republican administrations to Democratic administrations. And this year, the presidential determination, which is what determines that number, is set to 62,500. Earlier this year, with the previous administration, it was set to 15,000, which was the lowest it's ever been. And we have a promise to ramp up not just from 15,000 to 62,000, but from 62,000 all the way up to 125,000 in the following year. So we're looking at quite the anticipated increase in refugee arrivals, which is very exciting for the state of Utah. Natalie, would you like to walk us through the path to resettlement?
Sure, I would be happy to. Thank you. I know there are a lot of questions about the process to become a refugee, and it's a thorough and lengthy process that can take anywhere from 18 to 36 months for individuals to be cleared for resettlement, and in some cases, it can take much longer. It starts with when a refugee flees their country of origin and files for refugee status with the UN High Commission on Refugees in their first country of sanctuary. The UN works to validate the individual's claim to refugee status, conduct security clearances, and then adjudication. And from there, if approved, they're matched with one of 9 resettlement agencies where pre-travel activities are conducted, including the health screenings that Olivia mentioned, cultural orientations, and a lot more before they arrive in the US. And the 2 agencies who resettle refugees in Utah are 2 of the largest resettlement agencies, the International Rescue Committee and Catholic Community Services. And our job is to meet them at the airport and begin a relationship with the family on their journey to successful integration in Utah. It's important to note that the resettlement vetting process for the United States involves 6 different government agencies before an individual even arrives in the United States, and they're all listed here on that slide. And that less than 1% of the world's refugees will have the opportunity to get resettled into another country.
Hi, I'm Asha Parekh. I'm the director of the Refugee Services Office for the Department of Workforce Services. And I'm going to just talk about Utah's resettlement numbers overall. So the resettlement program in Utah began in 1984, and Catholic Community Services was the first agency that started resettling refugees here. The data that we're showing just identifies the drop over the last 4 years in the numbers of refugees. So prior to 2017, we were resettling up around 1,200 refugees annually. And over the last 4 years, that's dropped down to 238 individuals. Arrivals were primarily from South Sudan, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Bhutan, Somalia, and Iraq. These are some of the larger communities that are resettled in Utah. Over the last year, we've seen more arrivals from Afghanistan, Myanmar or Burma, and Sudan as more primary arrivals. And our numbers here also include some SIVs and asylees. So SIVs are people with special immigrant visas, and they're individuals who have assisted the US government, for example, in Iraq, and then are granted immigration here because their status is probably not going to be safe in their home country as a result of their work with the government. Okay, that's all I'm going to share for this slide.
And I'll just share a little bit about the International Rescue Committee. We work very closely along with our partners at the Department of Workforce Services Refugee Services Office and the Center, as well as Catholic Community Services on our resettlement activities. Each year, the IRC serves around 2,000 individuals, and last year we resettled 185 individuals, providing them with the assistance they need when they first arrive. Our work is made possible through over 20 different programs, including those that support refugees beyond their initial resettlement period to assist with things like small business development, home ownership, and applying for citizenship, building assets, and more. We have a robust staff and support from hundreds of volunteers. I appreciate Senator Thatcher noting high rate of volunteerism in our state and community support, and we definitely receive the benefit of that with the International Rescue Committee. All this is to say that we strive to provide comprehensive services to support refugees on their path to self-sufficiency through intimately and well-coordinated services with our partners and the IRC.
Hi, I'm Aden Batar. I'm the Director of the Migration and Refugee Services for Catholic Community Services of Utah. We are the other resettlement agency that brings refugees here in Utah as well. As Asha mentioned, we started the refugee resettlement program back in the early 80s. So we have 3 separate programs that we administer in the Catholic Community Services. So the refugee resettlement program, where we bring hundreds of refugees and we help them settle here in Salt Lake County area. There are times where we had to go outside of Salt Lake County. We had to settle refugees in Ogden area, and and we will continue to resettle refugees in the northern part of Utah to make sure that our communities, are diversified for where the refugees will be resettled, so everybody can have the opportunity to welcome the refugees in our community. Throughout the refugee resettlement program, we do a lot of other services, including we do case management for 2 years for every refugees to receive. We do employment services, health services, education services, and many other support services that the refugees that need to have during their transition into the United States. We also have a refugee foster care program where we bring unaccompanied refugee minors coming from all over the world. And currently we have about roughly 100 children in our care. The children come to the program when they are under the age of 18 and can remain in the program until they are age 21. Not necessarily refugees are in this particular group. We also have children that have been, trafficked into the United States, children who cross the border, who don't have any caregiver when they come to the US. So all those children who come to the program, they will be in the care of Catholic Community Services. So we kind of like their guardian until they reach the age of majority or until they are reunited with their loved ones. We also have immigration program where we provide, immigration services to anyone who's seeking, to legalize or change their status or want to become citizen or want to have a representation at the immigration court. So our staff are always dedicated to helping anyone who is in need of any immigration services. We have 60 staff that provide all the services. Majority of our staff are former refugees themselves, including myself. We hire the refugees who show that they have the capability of helping others speaking different languages. Many of our staff speak a minimum 2 or 3 languages, each one of them. Every year we serve over 3,000 clients throughout our programs, and all these individuals they receive variety of services throughout our programs. Not only we do all the services by ourselves, we heavily rely on volunteers who donate thousands of hours every year. Currently we have 500 active volunteers that donate their time, whether it would be helping through our education system or our case management or our employment, and they contribute a lot of services to the refugees that we resettle. So that's why we highly value our volunteers, and we could not do the work that we do without their support.
I'm going to just talk a little bit about the Refugee Services Office, which we've said is part of the Department of Workforce Services. One of the key things that we do is manage the distribution of federal funding for refugee services from 2 months post-arrival to about 5 years and beyond. So that is, I guess, our most important function. We also work with the resettlement agencies to implement federal policy and provide funding through some of our contracts and services. The other big role that we play is we also have the Utah Refugee Center, which provides services to refugees, beginning largely employment. So because we're part of workforce services, one of the key areas that we work with refugees in is employment, working with them to increase their wages. And our big goal is to work towards a living wage for all refugees in Utah. And lastly, the center works to build capacity amongst refugee organizations so that they are able to provide better supports for each other and become better integrated into the world of Utah.
I'm going to talk a little bit about Resettlement Ramp Up, as Olivia shared, that we are anticipating an increase in refugee arrivals throughout the United States and getting Utah back to the 1,200 refugees that we'd historically been resettling before. So with nearly 80 million refugees and displaced people around the world, the decision to increase the number of refugees in the United States is welcome this year. And as I said, closer to the historic bipartisan averages that we've experienced in years past. It takes a great deal of preparation and care to ensure that we're ready to meet the demand of increased arrivals. And as such, we will work collectively to cultivate stronger relationships with state and local government officials on refugee resettlement. So opportunities like this to share more about our work is critically important. Place a stronger emphasis on community engagement and investment in resettlement, and build the capacity of the resettlement agencies and other key partners to return to these numbers, which includes working closely with school districts, healthcare providers, employers, and so many others. I'm happy to share this photo of a client, one of our former clients, who was one of the first Syrian families that was resettled into Utah. Noor has gone through so many different programs within our organization and within the community as well. And he's a successful small business, food business owner. And this last year, he and his wife became US citizens. He voted for the first time in this last election. And so this is just one of the many success stories that we see throughout our community when we can provide such comprehensive services and welcome refugees into Utah, who ultimately become citizens and engage civically within our communities as well. Then next slide. I'd like to introduce for a moment one of the clients that we've served through the International Rescue Committee. Her name is Amira, and Amira arrived almost 2 years ago to the United States and has experienced quite a bit of success in her work with the IRC and then in the community as well. And so Amira is here with us today, and I'm hoping we can do a quick Q&A with Amira, and she can tell us a little bit about her resettlement journey and what life has been like for her in the United States. So Amira, are you on camera?
Yes, I am. Hi, Natalie.
Hi, Amira. Thank you for joining us today. I really think it's so important for our elected officials to hear from refugees themselves and their experience, creating a life in Utah as part of the constituents that make up our community. So if you wouldn't mind, then just share a little bit about yourself and your country of origin and when you arrived and what your first days and weeks were like when you arrived in Utah.
Thank you, Natalie, for having me here today and to share the little experience that I have. So my name is Amira. I am a refugee from Central African Republic. I arrived in the US in March 2019, almost 2 years. I like volunteering and giving back to my community. Life in Utah was, at the beginning, it was really hard for me because everything is new here, especially the weather. It was really cold, but we get adapted to the weather and everything. We were looking for a place, a safe place to start new life, and I was really excited to come in USA, especially Utah, because Utah has this reputation of being one of the most safe places in America. It was hard, everything was new, but IRC was there to give us the orientation we needed and the tools and resources we needed to get adapted, and so there I am.
Yeah. And you wasted no time in getting enrolled in school and finding a job that you can move into. Tell us a little bit about what you're up to now.
I'm working at Les Alton Company as a digital marketer. I like my work. I like everything I'm doing. I'm learning a lot, and people are really kind. And this is also what I really like here in the United States. Those opportunities you find to grow up and to to start your life and to learn new skills.
Good. And when you participated in the Miss Africa Utah competition, you had a specific platform that you wanted to make sure that people know about. Tell us about that.
My platform is called Preventer. It's a very dear to my heart. For the little story, my mom passed away 3 years ago from breast cancer. I literally grew up watching her suffering from breast cancer. But in our countries, most countries refugees come from, we don't have those resources to educate women about breast cancer. We don't have structure to take care of breast cancer issues like mammogram and all of those stuff. But the thing is that here in the United States, we do have resources. There are platforms and organizations helping refugees or people to get, resources or mammograms. So refugees and immigrants don't know about that. So they miss this opportunity simply because they don't know and they're not educated. So reason why I initiated my platform called Preventer, because I believe that the best way to protect ourselves is to get prevention. So my goal is to become a kind of bridge between the resources and the refugees, to get them the education they're needed to know about breast cancer, to know like, hey, do you know that it's important to get mammogram? Do you know that there is a place you can get like free mammogram? Or if you have like a problem or issue with your breast, there are places you need to go to. So yeah, this is what I wanted to do with my platform. And my targets are refugees and immigrants, because they don't know about that and they need to know, because those resources out there are there for them and they need to be educated.
Thank you, Amira. It is a really important platform, and I'm glad that you've taken this on. What do you think Utah's elected officials should know about refugees? Since we have the ears of so many people right now, what do you think is the most important thing that people should know about refugees in Utah, or refugees in general, I should say?
I particularly admire refugees because I'm also a refugee. It is not easy to leave where when you are from, and to leave everything, to lose everything, and to start a new life. So refugees, personally, I think are really talented people. They're just looking for a safe place to start a new life and to realize their dreams. And they're full of skills, and what they want for me is opportunity to show what they're able to do and to contribute to the country's development and to give back to the community.
Thank you, Amira. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us.
Thank you for having me here today.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Amira and Natalie, for treating us to that lovely conversation. We'll now take a few minutes to hear from Representative Johnson to discuss his support for refugees, how you can assist refugees, and to discuss a couple of pieces of legislation that he has coming down the pipeline. Representative Johnson? I think you're muted, Representative.
I'm sorry. My guess is that everybody who's on this Zoom call today has a great big heart because you care about other people, and it just really shows in what I'm hearing. I'm thankful that we have an opportunity to get to know different people, to understand their cultures, to blend them together. And I'm thankful that the United States allows that to happen. I think we have a lot in this country that can be shared, and we should share it. And so I have a real soft spot in my heart for this. So I spent 50 years doing my job in public and higher education. In public schools, I had a lot of kids, a lot of families that transitioned through places where I was. And I would tell you that one of the most important things that can happen for anybody is for them to be accepted in, and then to get acquainted with services that are available, and then understand that education is really important. And I've watched many kids over the years, just little kids, start in elementary school and go all the way through, and then go on to either technical schools or on to colleges, whatever it was. They saw the need to take advantage of the opportunities and to rise up and to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. And I think education is the thing that really provides that. And so I just want to tell you that that's really important to me. These 2 pieces of legislation came to me because Natalie and Olivia reached out to me And I think they got my name from somebody, but I don't know why exactly. But I think they knew that this is sort of my area and something I'm really very passionate about. And so part of this, these two different bills, one is called Newcomer Enrollment Amendments. And I'm sorry about the background noise. Is that? I think it'll settle down here in just a minute. Some people come in, I'm sorry. One is called Newcomer Enrollment Amendments, and it just deals with age documentation, making sure that we're finding out, what the ages of kids are, and then get them services that are age appropriate. And that's really important for me in working with a child, especially in school. So that was really important. The other thing is immunization timelines. And, just so that you know, in the United States, locally, you can opt out of getting immunizations. And I think that's really important. Or you can opt in to get them. But one of the things that happens is that needs to be taught to people. And so part of all of this legislation really is going to be, hopefully, be an outreach so that people understand what is required of them, what are the options available to them, how do they get these services such as immunizations, get it done timely if they would desire to have them. And then the other thing that's really important in this bill, and I find this part to be really interesting, Natalie and Olivia, about international transcript repository. It just seems really weird to me that we wouldn't have already had this in place. That we accept people in, they're in schools, transcripts are developed for them. There's an electronic repository for that transcript, and there's an electronic way that can be shared, as maybe as a child and a family moves from maybe one school or one community to the other. And so I think this is going to be really important moving forward. The second piece of really deals with family engagement, and I'm really glad that you use the word engagement. And I will tell you that so I'm not bragging, I just need to tell you a couple things really quickly. I took schools that were failing schools, and they ended up being recognized among the top 300 schools in America. I worked in schools and moved them to being places that were recognized as a national blue ribbon school. And those things are because of two things. People would ask me this question: what is it that's really good about your school? And I'd listen to the other people in the room, and they would say how great their technology was and how great their teaching staff was and this and that and the other. Well, all of those elements were really important. But you know what my answer was? Access and equity. And if you really believe that, what you do is then you make sure that every child, no matter what, has access to everything you have. And it is fair, it's equal, there's equity for everyone. And if you think about what you're running, especially in a school, I think with that mindset, you change the people who are around you, and it changes the school. It changes how people are treated. It changes how they're taught. And so I just wanted to share that with you, that this family engagement piece for these families that are allowed to come into the United States, we really need to do this. We cannot allow people to come to this country and then allow them to fail. Why would we do that? Why would we do that? So I think that this outreach piece, and there's a resolution that is quite detailed, and I think it's going to be really important. That's kind of related kind of related to this these family engagement amendments. And we'll get this figured out and get the legislation crafted properly. And we're going to be painstaking about that and get it right. So if we don't get that out this session, we'll get it out the next session. But this is really important future work. And I just wanted to mention these things to you today. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for your words and all that you have done and are doing, Representative Johnson. We really appreciate your advocacy and the time that you're putting into these pieces.